The BREWtally podcast is proudly sponsored by Starving Artist Brewing. Starving Artist Brewing may be a small speck on Michigan's beer map, but they say big things come in small packages. A brewery who really puts their money where their mouth is, supporting underground artists far and wide. Making delicious beers with the simple belief that you should judge beer, not people. BREWtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
For what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the BREWtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Will Putney. He returns. I believe this is his third time on the show. If you don't know who Will Putney is, he is from Fit for an Autopsy. He is also in End. He is also in Better Lovers, and he also is a awesome producer, owns his own studio, Graphic Nature Studios, and dude just does a ton. As I've joked with some other people that have been frequent guests on the show, dude just hates downtime. He's allergic to downtime. Also, I've still got this cold that you heard from last week. Full transparency. I am recording this the same day that I did last week's intro and outros. I'm not sure if my cold is going to get any better or worse. I also have a few other podcasts I got going on this week, so I'm going to try to just make sure that, like, if I do blow out my voice or lose it or something due to this cold, that I do as much as I can while I still can without affecting my work output. And honestly, on top of that, it's my wife's birthday this week, and we got a bunch of other things, so it is kind of just a busy week, and I just want to make sure I'm staying ahead and staying active. This chat with Will was a lot of fun. I always enjoy talking with him. He is somebody who, like I was saying just a couple of seconds ago, is always busy doing something, and I just kind of love sort of picking the brain of, like, how do you compartmentalize different projects? How do you not get overwhelmed? How do you, just make sure everything is of a quality while also, especially... And granted, this episode was supposed to kind of focus on End because they have a new record that's out now. It fucking rips. You should check it out. If you aren't familiar with who that band is or why you should check them out, you should, because they are rad. I was bummed I had a little bit of a Sophie's Choice. Wife and I went to go see Metallica, as you know, to go see the homie Patrick and Ice Nine Dudes, in addition to Metallica as well. And End was playing like 7 minutes away. And unfortunately, I couldn't leave one venue, go to see End, and then come back. But I really wanted to. I still haven't seen End. Actually, I have seen End. I keep forgetting. I've seen End on the Every Time I Die Christmas show. I even fucking did that in the chat with Will, where I forgot. I was like, oh, you guys are doing Blissmas for the first, Better Lovers Christmas show. And I was like, oh, this will be your first Christmas thing. And then I forgot that they played the last Tid the Season. So good to see if I'm nothing but consistent with my forgetful memory. But really wanted to go see End, just to see the dudes crush in a small venue that's more for them. Would have been really rad. But you know what? It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen eventually because I do make it a point to go see the bands that I really want to see, and End is one of them. That said, this chat does kind of focus more on Better Lovers. That is a band that I had tried to get someone from the band on when they had first, put out the EP, and just kind of didn't luck out with an interview with anybody for that like press cycle. And so there was just a lot to unpack with that because it kind of came out of nowhere. They started hitting the road right away. There's just a lot to ask, and for me, it's just because there wasn't really a whole lot known about the project. It was pretty quick, like, hey, Better Lovers is a thing. We're not entirely sure who's in it. Then the video comes out, big reveal that Greg's in the band, Will's in the band. Like, everything is what it is, and there just, for me, wasn't a lot known or shown at that point of what and how everything happened. And to me, with Will kind of being in a few other bands at this point, I kind of wanted to know, like, the process, like I was saying earlier, like, how do you kind of compartmentalize your work life, your professional life and all that stuff. So what was the process of probably coming in as a producer initially to then going, hey, I'm actually going to be a member of this band? What is it like learning how to write with these guys that you've worked with before, recording Every Time I Die, but not necessarily being an integral part of the writing process of this new band? And to me, those are the kind of questions that I hadn't seen be answered, or asked, I should say. So while I appreciate Will's time, and he was on to talk about one thing, it definitely was a little bit harder not to focus and steer my questions toward things I wanted to know. But I think we kind of talk about a lot of interesting things. I know I've been rambling on here for almost 5 minutes, and to get right to it, let's get into my conversation with Will Putney, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it. I feel like I don't know how you have time to even do this, because I feel like you are just in like every band ever right now.
Yeah, a little busy right now, but it's all good. Have always time to chat.
How was your trip to London?
Fucking awesome. Really fun.
Yeah.
We had a really good time. Really great shows.
Didn't look like you stuck around for the Bills game, though.
No, I had to get back. Yeah.
I mean, possibly you're the reason they lost because you didn't go.
Yeah, I know. It's my fault.
I mean, I think by proximity now, I think you have to be a Bills fan. I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, it like rubs off on you, I guess. It's awesome.
Yeah. I got to say, I'm looking forward to the Blissmas show. I was lucky enough to get tickets to the first show. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that should be fun. Looking forward.
Because I'm trying to think, like, not trying to make it necessarily about, Every Time I Die or anything like that, but I'm trying to think, were you ever a part of, I guess you were with the last Tidmas, because you did End. You were a part of that. I was going to say, what is your involvement, or have you been to many of them over the years? So, like, do you know what to expect, kind of? But I guess I answered my own question because you were there, as was I.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's a good different vibe this year. Obviously, we're in a different room. We only have 4 songs out in the world, so Riverworks seemed crazy, but we're gonna do Town Ballroom and another show at Buffalo Ironworks the next day, and yeah, it's cool. The lineup's cool. It should be very, very fun.
It's funny to me because I was talking with Brooks leading up to because I knew about the show before it was announced. And he didn't tell me, though, initially where the venue was going to be, but I had kind of just assumed it might have been a Riverworks, and like not knowing a lineup or anything like that at the time. But I'm kind of surprised because I feel like, and the general consensus is no one was sure that they could fill the room. And in my head, I'm like, I think you guys could have.
Yeah, I think it was more about what kind of show we want to do, they wouldn't let us have a no barrier show, and for the amount of material we have, we felt like we weren't going to deliver like the best show we could in a venue like that. It just didn't feel like the band was far along enough, not so much like the tickets. We had a lot of discussion about making sure if we're going to do that it's as cool as it could possibly be. And I think we're just more in the mindset of like wanting to have just a fun show that made sense for the band where we were, and the 2 that we have booked are going to be awesome. So yeah, I think it worked out, and I wouldn't be surprised if it returns there, in the future. But I think for now, this was just more of the vibe for the band.
Something that's really been
I don't know if interesting is the word. I feel like it's a commendable thing from a stranger on the internet, but it's a thing where I feel like coming out the gate with Better Lovers, and we'll get to end and some of the other stuff I want to talk about, but I feel like too many bands in your position would have just been like, well, we're from this pedigree of these other bands. We deserve to be starting out at this level. We're not going to open tours unless they're just like, arena shows opening for like Lamb of God or something. But it seems like you all collectively, before the band came out, kind of made it a stamp almost to be like, this is a new band and we're going to earn everything along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we're a new band. Like it isn't like obviously I appreciate that people who were fans of all our other projects give it a listen and stuff, but we're not trying to ride on coattails from, the other bands everybody was in and stuff. And I think it's just like the nature of starting out just feels right to just open the tour and not insist that you're giving the world. Like nobody in this band is necessarily a greedy person. Everybody kind of understands what it's like to build a band. And, it was like, it just feels like everything we're doing now, we're starting to headline shows, but they're not huge rooms. Everything is like fun and small. And I don't know, we're content. We feel like we're right where we should be, and I think hopefully, the band can continue to grow and we can get more opportunities to do stuff, but everyone's just like understands what it's like to start a new band, and we didn't want to come in like we're owed anything, because we're not. We're just normal dudes who play music,
Well, I would almost actually ask you that question because, you doing End was kind of your first foray into this kind of realm of starting a new band with people that have been in established bands before. And obviously Greg, being in Dillinger and kind of doing his solo stuff and stuff with Jerry Cantrell. I wonder, did the rest of the guys that make up Better Lovers, did you both maybe offer them advice as to kind of how to navigate this thing? Because it's the first time in 20 something years they're kind of doing something brand new.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of like introducing new people and new teams and stuff. Those dudes were kind of could not set in their ways, but they definitely were kind of operating with like the same group of people, same decision process, different types, one style of communication. And, me and Greg come from multiple projects. So it was cool to be like, well, this guy's cool. We should talk to them. Maybe we should do this. Like I do this with this project and it works. So it's just it's good. It's a good collective, like, of people. We all pool our resources. Like our communication is great. Everybody in the band gets along really well and values each other's opinions. It's a really cool scenario to be in where everybody carries their own weight and has some kind of skill or thing to bring to the table all the time. It's just grateful to be a part of it.
I would wonder, you mentioned something that I find to be an interesting talking point, but communicating. And I feel like that's got to be something that you have probably learned to do and be very good at, listening and communicating between your quote unquote day job of producing and so forth, and working with different types of personalities all the time. And then obviously working with, you're doing End and then now Better Lovers and, shit, literally everything you do. I just feel like it is an exercise in that. Like, how do you realize how often you probably are pulling from different scenarios where you're like, oh, this is where I've learned to communicate or talk like this because of this experience? Like, is that something you're aware of?
I think it's just like the sum of all the parts, every band I work with or record I make or people I play with. Like, I feel like you learn something from everyone, whether that's a positive thing, like a songwriting thing, or how people handle this themselves, or an aesthetic choice, or, who's good at their job, who's not, or if it's like negative stuff, like what to avoid, like what song doesn't work, what, manager or booking agent sucks, like who doesn't do this right, so it's like, it's just being involved in music for so long, you just pick up all these little tiny things, but it isn't like, there's no like one tell. I guess it's just experience. And at the end of the day, we've, luckily a lot of the projects I'm in is filled with dudes who have experience in this world. And it makes it a lot easier to kind of make smart decisions and not drop the ball on things. So, I'd imagine, I'd imagine it would be a lot harder to get things moving or off the ground with new projects, or, if it was just guys who walked into this world and started from scratch. But it's definitely been nice being able to work with people who have their shit together,
Yeah, I think that's, as I kind of, the few times I've had you on the show and we've kind of talked about a lot of different things, you seem like someone who, and this is from an outsider's perspective again, but it seems like you're someone who does things in a very calculated manner. Like there's not really, I don't want to say wasted motion, but I guess wasted motion is the first thing that comes to my head. So it's probably the more accurate word I'm trying to get out, but it just feels like you're a very calculated and planned type of person. So it seems like that kind of skill set probably makes it to where it's easier for you to kind of, communicate in such a manner with different people and understanding maybe a role that you need to play. And that's something I've been talking a lot more about and thinking a lot more about in my life in general, is just roles and how we all play different roles in the different scenarios we happen to find ourselves in.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I put a lot of energy and, effort into whatever musical project I'm doing as a band or as a studio. And I feel like it's a disservice, especially when I'm responsible for other people's music. Like if I'm making a record, to like not, think about it and try to do the best job you can and try to make the best decisions. And, people entrust me with like, their, not just their art, but like their careers and stuff. And it's like, that should come with pressure. Like you should take that seriously and you should try hard and, try to make the best decisions possible to help, to help everybody succeed. So to me, it's very important, and I think if I'm going to do anything in the space of music, I want to care about it. I want to think about it. I want it to be as good as I think it can be, so it's just a natural thing of like, well, why else would you do it?
Or this might be a weird question. Does the weight, I guess, that you attaching your name to now, the weight of it from outsiders, does it ever actually weigh on you? Like, do you ever think about that?
I mean, there's definitely things I wouldn't put my name on, not yeah. Like I don't think, I mean, I really don't know the scope of how much people care whether or not I'm involved in anything, but I think personally, I know there's things I would just avoid doing because I wouldn't want to stand behind it, or I wouldn't want to, say like, yeah, here it is. This is me doing my best, for whatever reason, and I think, but as far as like, if whatever people think about it, I don't really know,
Well, I think it just becomes this thing, and maybe it's because I was on a really weird listening tangent today of listening to like The Cure earlier. I was listening to Disintegration because it's kind of fall and chilly out and just felt like a good record to listen to given the circumstance. And thinking about like the idea of like Robert Smith is this thing to so many people. He's kind of in a scene that they came up in. He's kind of at the upper echelon of that. And then I started thinking about, is there a point in someone's career when you become kind of the top of something and you're kind of, when people think of this thing, you're at the top of that list that people think of? And even thinking of producers where it's like, okay, for a while it was Ross Robinson. It's to a degree, it's Evitz, depending on the scene you're looking into. It's, for a while it was Adam D. Now it's kind of, you're in that same short list of producers who are kind of the go-to person. If someone's doing this record, everyone's going to probably give it a listen just because of the standard that you probably have held yourself to, and also the quality that you put out with the people you work with. And it just becomes a thing where it's like, as you were kind of talking about sort of intent, it's like, I wonder if you're, and by proxy, other people are aware of, there is this responsibility, I guess, of like, when my name's attached to something, it means something to people now.
Yeah. I mean, it's very flattering that, people think I'm a person of value in that sense, I don't really think, I mean, honestly, I feel like I've been fortunate to just align myself with the right musicians and people too, and I think we help each other in that sense. There's never really been a record that's just been about me.
Right.
And I think I owe a lot to a lot of the artists I've worked with on being, having the opportunity to have a career in music like this. And then even more than that, the one that people care about, but yeah, I mean, I think people have cool moments in their careers, and I'm just happy that I get opportunities like to work with bands that I respect. And it is very, it comes with responsibility that I don't take lightly,
Something I want to shift a little bit to end just because, the new record's coming out in about 2 weeks as of when we're recording this. It seems like N kind of exists in this realm of it's kind of just comes out when it's ready, or at least when it's when it's done. And, in the day and age where content is king, it seems like all of you collectively in the band don't post that you're really recording any of this stuff. So by the time we're all getting it, it's like, oh shit, there's new End and we're excited about it. It's not this long 5-6 month promo plan. It's just like, it's kind of how like records used to be, where it's like, here's a song, it's coming out in like a month, we'll see you then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy not to have to be a content machine for a project and letting the music kind of speak for itself. And I mean, it's definitely part of what we all want to do with N collectively. It really is just about the music with that band, and we're not the personalities that kind of have the time for that either. And everybody has their other full-time thing that kind of sometimes requires that. And we don't really look at it like, we need to keep generating whatever, kind of bullshit's going to live on our social medias, or, it's just like, this is a band that formed to make music. And that's more or less what we do, and obviously, like the live show element of it over the past couple of years, we've been able to do more, and we all love it, but it's definitely like, this is just a passion project, and part of that is like caring greatly about the music and the product and the aesthetic and the visual stuff and what everyone is going to receive. But the sort of, I wouldn't call it meaningless, but like the frivolous stuff that comes with being in a band full time, we kind of just skip it because it isn't important to us in this particular project.
Well, what's interesting is, again, thinking, because I had texted Greg because I was trying to see if he would want to come back on, because it's been so long since I had him on. And indirectly, he was the one when we did our initial podcast chat that was like, I have this new band. We can't talk about it on record because like it's going to be dropping as a surprise. And it was the one that kind of helped me get everybody else to kind of drop the episodes when the initial EP was coming out. But it's a thing where thinking even back to then, where it's like, the band just existed all of a sudden and things were there. And it's just in this day and age, like, it's just, that's not a thing anymore. Like, it's just so kind of refreshing. And I'm kind of beating a dead horse because I just said this, but it's a thing where letting the music stand on its own 2 feet without anything else to hold it up, really, I think is weirdly in 2023, it's a very adventurous thing to do, because I think so many people, it's about the longevity of keeping people engaged and so forth. And it seems like End is one of those bands that from the outside doesn't give a shit about those things and just wants people, like, if like at a show, like 70 people show up, you're going to be so rad that like 70 people showed up because those are the people that really want to be there. And it feels like this band is that kind of a band where it's not for anything other than just the enjoyment and the people who want to enjoy it with you.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very niche style band, luckily, like, enough people kind of are into the band where the live shows are fun, and it doesn't feel like, we're only just playing for super fans of this very pigeonholed thing. But I guess I don't care. I'm happy to just make the music. It's very cool that people like it. I'd probably still do it if it was on a much smaller scale too,
This is probably a weird question, and I'll kind of explain how I got to it thinking about it today. But another record I've been really deep diving into is Wu-Tang Clan's Forever record. And as I listened to it over the last couple of years of kind of just listening to things from a different perspective as an older music lover and appreciator, is like how RZA produces each individual person differently, like their vocal tracks. And I went from listening to that to then listening to End, and then I went back to Better Lovers, and then went to like Fit and some other things that you have done. And it's interesting to me, like how different, even with End, I feel like your guitar tone is different from like each record or each EP. Better Lovers, the guitar tone doesn't sound the same as it has on anything. And it's something I was wondering, like, do you have a tone in mind for each project, or is it just kind of something that I was messing with something and it just becomes its thing? So each record kind of literally, or each output becomes its own thing in a tonal perspective, and it can be ever changing because that's how the music is made.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, that Wu-Tang record's awesome. Yeah, Triumphs might be one of the best hip-hop songs ever, and RZA is a fantastic producer who did an unbelievable job at all the personalities, like development, with those guys, and particularly that Triumph song is like, I think it's like 6 minutes long, and there's not even a chorus.
No hook. There's no hook.
Yeah. Just one dude after another, and it keeps you interested because of how different they are. Yeah, it's brilliant. But yeah, I mean, if guitar tones are like rappers in a group, it's very. I have over the years, I've built up like a lot of tools that'll give me a good range of tones and stuff, and I think, whether it's from the band or from me, if whatever project it is, we'll generally have like an idea in mind of what we're going for, and then there's always like the kind of exploration phase to try to figure out what's going to be cool, for the given record and stuff. And I never really have like everything's kind of from scratch when I do records, like where I'm going for tones like that and stuff. Obviously, like if somebody has something specific in mind, I look at what I have here and figure out how I can get that, or a reference or something. But if I'm producing a record and it's kind of open for ideas, we usually just like go from scratch and run through different things and try to find combinations of things that are unique. And I mean, it's just like that sound design layer of record producing is like, it's the cool part, it's like where you get to try to invent something that's unique to the band that hasn't been heard before. Like it's definitely, it's hard, there's a lot's been done, but it's like rewarding when you can pull it off.
Speaking to a weird production thing, and I was just thinking about it because I know on the last Fit record that we talked about, and I think I saw something you posted on Better Lovers. Is there something on the upcoming End record where you use your dog on the record?
Other dogs? No dogs on this one, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We didn't have we didn't record a dog this time. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, it's slowly becoming like your thing where it's like, okay, like here's like that thing you thought was this is actually like me recording my dog doing this.
Yeah, we like to save that for the full lengths. This was just an EP.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, for the Better Lovers one. For maybe the next End one, we'll get it.
Okay. I was going to say too, obviously Body Count record you were working on last time we talked, and that was about a year-ish or so ago. I would assume that thing's got to be done.
Couldn't probably get into too much detail on where it's at currently. But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
we've been.
Well, then that tells me that it's not done.
we're getting there on it. Yeah, it's trying to coordinate a lot of schedules with that one. But yeah, there's stuff. There should be stuff in the future.
Fair enough. Something I did want to kind of talk about, because I think it's your publicist and I were actually talking about it in an email, was because I wasn't sure where you ended up with the studio, because your studio ended up moving and you ended up having Evans take over your old space. How is it kind of to leave a place and kind of start making new memories at a new place?
I mean, I had spent maybe 12 years at our other studio in Belleville, which was a cool space for the price and being close to the city and stuff. But it was like in kind of a dumpy area and slowly growing with inconvenience. And we, I had always looked forward to like kind of being able to build out a place with like a little more control from scratch and having a little more space for certain things. And in 2020, we moved out into the woods a little bit where I have like a bigger property, and I was able to kind of get what I think is a much better studio and living situation together for bands. And, at first it was like, man, Belleville was kind of like iconic for a lot of the bands I work with. Are they going to like coming to like a new studio, but, I mean, it is just so much better that I don't think I think that in the first hour that usually leaves everyone's head,
Yeah, I think there becomes sort of this thing, and I've kind of gone through it when I bought the house that we're living in, that I've lived in for 13 years, almost 14 now. But eventually after having roommates and stuff like that, and once we bought the house in the last year, it was a thing where purging all of the like different stuff I'd wanted to get rid of and like other people's stuff that had been left behind. At first it seemed like such a, well, yeah, I just want to get rid of this shit and get it the fuck out of my house. And then as I was doing it and tearing some things down, it's like some of the memories that you have associated with these things or with these people that aren't around anymore, it kind of gets a little hard where you're like, oh man, this sucks. Maybe I don't want to get rid of this thing. Maybe I kind of want to keep this the way it is. And I feel like there's sort of like a human alchemy of sorts of when you're creating something from scratch, like making a record and the memories and all the things associated with the people that have come in those doors to make those records. It's probably got be a little bit hard as you're kind of tearing it all out and going, oh, maybe I don't want to leave here. Like this is where like things started. This is where like these things happened.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely sad to leave the Belleville studio, but also extremely relieving, because we were kind of at our end there, and I feel like it was definitely just time for change and time to kind of upgrade certain things. And I feel like we just in a way kind of like outgrew the situation we were in there, but I was, we made a lot of cool records there, it was a lot of cool memories. And it was at first tough, and looking back now, it was just like, oh yeah, remember that was tough. Like we feel like a little bit. Yeah.
It's funny because you moved out to the woods, and I know my friend Josh Roeder, basically that was the other thing the publicist and I were talking about, is I was like, it sounds like Will went Josh's route, just being in the middle of nowhere and just creating like a fun kind of vibe, but also one that's like not really able to be distracted by anything other than just creating the music and creating the thing that you're there to do.
Yeah, I mean, I much prefer the focused environment that's here, and not dealing with neighbors or people. Is like, it's just much better to just stay focused on making a record. We're not that far out technically, like we're just kind of off. Yeah, I mean, I'm in the woods. If you just like walked out of my yard, you'd think we're in the middle of nowhere, but I'm still, in Brooklyn within the hour to go to a show and stuff. So it's like, it's a pretty cool balance of like still being close to civilization and also having some space.
Yeah, well, that is where you differ from Josh, who is also a hermit crab and pretty much never leaves his house or goes anywhere, which is always kind of, it almost becomes like a Sasquatch sighting when you see him at shows or something. Like, holy shit, dude, you're out of your house.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to get out of the house, and Josh is the man. I like Josh, but I was the hermit guy for a long time too, and it started to feel unhealthy to me. And I think a big part of like going back on tour after COVID, it was like very therapeutic for me to like just be around strangers and more people, and kind of, you also get this like reality feedback of all the stuff you do, playing festivals all summer with tons of bands I've recorded, and you're kind of like watching it in real time, like what's reacting, what works. I feel like you learn from the real world as much as you learn from sitting at home working on stuff, and I like, it's definitely important, especially now, like as we're all getting older, and I'm getting older as a record producer, and there's kids that are, half my age starting bands and stuff where it's like, I don't understand what the hell is going on with new music from time to time, so it's like I kind of like need to see things too and watch live music, and there's definitely important.
Yeah, I think that at times, like, I'm sort of stuck in my ways at times, like seeing something like a Furnace Fest kind of environment where it's mostly a lot of nostalgia bands. And it's like, I see something like that and I'm like, oh man, that'd be so cool to go to. But then I'm also like, it reminds me sort of the same problem I would have going to like some of the like Warped Tour and stuff where I'm like, well, this band's playing at this time and this band's playing too. And I haven't seen either before. So like, how do I choose? And it's like, you could try to do like the half and half thing, but it just kind of creates like this thing where looking at some of these festivals and some of the different tours and stuff that come around, it's like, I had like a weird one a couple years ago was going to see Guar with The Devil You Know. Or is that what they're called now? No, Light the Torch. Howard's band. But it was weird to see Howard be in a band and all the guys in that band be like the first band on a bill. And there was something about it where it was interesting to take in this new band, because at that point they had kind of rebranded and didn't really have much music out when I saw them. But it was weird to be like, this is a new band, but there is something that sets Howard apart when you see him. You're like, oh, I can see why you used to play to rooms bigger than this and be able to control like these kind of crowds. And it's weird as you kind of get older, when you see younger bands, you can kind of start seeing that thing where you're like, oh, this band's got it. This band, I don't know, they might. This band, not so much. Or like there's a piece of the band where you're like, the drummer's really good or this guitar player's really good, but like the rest of it doesn't work for me. And it feels weird to kind of look at music like that. And I feel like, I don't know if it's because of doing this show, having book shows, spent time in bands and stuff like that, where it's like you're just looking at things from a completely different perspective than the average concert goer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to like get the producer brain out of, my thought process when I'm like watching music or listening to music. I just try to be a fan of stuff can be a challenge sometimes, because it's like you're used to being so hypercritical on music, But I mean, even I've kind of learned, even when I just started producing, I was lucky to like work with some other really good producers and stuff. And in talking, about it, you kind of learn how important it is to like be aware of when you see something that you think is going to work, and like the A&R side of producing records is like almost as, it's not as, I wouldn't say as important, but it's definitely a big part of like being successful, is understanding like, hey, you kind of have to know if you're walking into a project that's going to be successful, and I think there's a lot of producers that I don't even think are great producers, but they're really great A&R dudes, and they wind up with these brilliant bands and it makes their job easy, Yeah. So it's like, it can be and vice versa. There's unbelievable record producers who just kind of maybe heard a band and thought they were cool, but didn't go see them live or didn't do the homework. And then they kind of find out when it's too late, like, oh man, this band actually sucks. Like, this is going to be a tough one. So it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of like, I try to objectively enjoy music more now when I'm like, out or playing shows and stuff. And I feel like I've been better at it. I think time away from the studio has occasionally helped me with that too, because I'm not just punished with hours and hours of music every day.
Kind of maybe a weird question, and forgive me if you've been asked this a bunch. I haven't seen it be answered, but it's something I would find interesting. So not really a whole lot has come out as of now about kind of the creation of Better Lovers, in the sense of how you ended up joining. I had kind of come under the assumption, from what I just assumed, is that you were recording them based on footage I would see Jordan and Mitch and everyone kind of posting. But at what point did you kind of get involved with the band, and how did you find it to include kind of your own writing style into that?
I mean, we stayed in touch after the breakup of their previous band, and we had, they didn't really stop making music at any point. And I knew I was going to be involved in one way or the other with them. And so, we had been bouncing songs back and forth through the pandemic, and were looking for, ideas on who could be a singer. And we had kind of plans to record it. And kind of Andy was like around for the initial stages of that, but it kind of worked out where he decided he didn't have, doesn't really have time to do a full-time band anymore with how successful his wrestling career is going and everything, which is awesome, and we all still love Andy. It just like wasn't in the cards in his life anymore, So it was like, okay, well, we'll figure that out. More concerned about figuring out who was going to be a singer, really, because that was, I think, probably more of like the pressing issue to like get a band going, And Jordan's great. It's not like he couldn't have just done everything up until a tour, by himself. But I don't know. It just kind of happened naturally. Like once Greg came into the fold, he's a singer who I really admire, and the opportunity to like do this, I was like, maybe I will do this. This is kind of cool. So I feel like we flirted with the idea a little bit, and then when it got serious with Greg, I was like, all right, I'll do this.
So by that admission, then, is the record, at least the EP as we've heard it, is that just all Jordan playing all the guitar parts, or are you on it as well?
No, we work. I mean, we're pretty collaborative in the studio, like I've worked with those guys for like, going on like 7 or 8 years now. So there's like a good trust, and there's like parts that, that I would like chuck an idea in, or even like our like Goose drummer wrote a part or two. Like there's like the cool thing about Better Lovers is everybody carries their own weight and can write a cool song. And, it's very like, hey, best idea wins. So what do you got for this? Or, hey, I think this part could be better. What can we do here? Let me see the guitar. Let me do this. Obviously it was like the born out of the three of them, but I kind of was happy to jump in as a producer role, and kind of work on songs with them a bit too. And now, it's still kind of exists like that, where we're all just working in tandem on things and finish each other's song ideas and stuff. I wrote one over the summer, and Jordan finished it, and then I went back and refinished it at the end, and then he's got something. He showed me something the other day, and I was like, oh, what if it does this? And then we just both wrote a riff together that we're stoked on. So it's like it's just a really good collaborative like synergy with all the dudes, which is why I wanted to do it in the first place anyway, because I was like, man, this is just final level, everything you want out of being in a band.
Well, I think the reason I ask is because like when being a fan of listening to other bands when they do something and finding where the influences of somebody else comes from. So like kind of like a good example of sort of the extreme side of it is, you look at something like Fall Out Boy, and then you look at something that Joe has done where it's like, the Damn Things, or even with Knives that he had done with Josh, formerly at ETID, and now his tech, basically. I think it's Pete's tech, but it's like when you kind of see the layers that Joe is able to play, you're then able to kind of see what he brings into Fall Out Boy in different capacities. Same with Andy, same with, everybody. And it's always interesting to kind of follow other side projects of sorts and seeing a different side of someone, seeing how they maybe bring that thing into the main thing they're known for. So kind of between knowing you for something like End and Fit and doing some of the production stuff, where I'm sure you're kind of having a hand in some of the songwriting a little bit. Better Lovers, it was like, okay, Jordan's, playing style is so diverse. And, you look at a thing like Thing with Feathers off of the last record, and it's like, all right, so like you can kind of go more melodic. You can kind of do these things. You play some of these like kind of panicky chords if you go all the way back into the band's discography. So it becomes this thing where it's like, okay, when you have someone that's so versed and people that are so well versed and dynamic, how do you find your place in that when, from my perspective, you've not really showcased necessarily the penchant for maybe some of the things this band does? So it was a thing of, how do you find your way into this, and how involved were you from kind of the jump, or was it more of, hey, here's an idea, and now as we're kind of writing and getting to know each other as a full band, now you're going to kind of start seeing and showcasing more sides of you in this band?
I mean, I feel like, I haven't directly been in a band like this, but I've definitely worked with bands in this lane, for a long time. And I do a lot of songwriting that's outside of just, the couple of bands that I'm in. I mean, I've written literally hundreds of songs. So, and I think those guys kind of know my background and the working together on multiple records before doing this band. I think they kind of knew what I was capable of as a musician too, so, and this genre of music I'm very familiar with. I've been a fan of it my whole life, and I could speak the language of it pretty well on an instrument. So I don't think there wasn't really hesitation in that sense, like where I had to really show anything. Like the first song I kind of sat down on tour this summer. I kind of just wrote a song like on the bandwagon, just with a laptop, and it's then we're playing it now, so it's like they think there's like some mutual trust between all of us. Like everybody has pretty good ideas in this band, and we've known each other long enough now where we just like kind of know to trust us too.
I would be interested in, and I mean, I'm sure more stuff's coming pretty quickly, but I remember the first time getting, the first playthrough and Sacrificial Participant, that like tapping melody with the vocal and stuff like that. I was like, and then the bridge section, I was like, well, fuck, man, I didn't expect this, with 30 Under 13 kind of being the launching point of what the band was to everybody. That it's like it has me intrigued and excited to kind of see like, all right, what other sonic territories can you go into at this point? Because I feel like I would like there to be something more like those moments, but like a full song of that, because I think that would be, I don't know, I just think it'd be interesting. It gives, to me, I always like when there's like kind of brevity amongst all like the just discordant chaos of aggressive music. Sometimes it's like giving something time and space to breathe makes those parts exponentially heavier, because it just gives you that moment of reprieve.
Yeah, I mean, dynamics in music super important, obviously, and I think when you're in a band with people with a collective taste, you kind of get to explore other places. I don't think we're really pinned down to do any one particular thing, and I'm sure as we continue to write music, we'll try stuff that's not as expected all the time.
I feel like it's a good place to be, and obviously having so many different creative outlets for yourself is probably, it's been funny. I was actually just saying this to someone the other day. Actually, it was the episode I did with TJ Miller from Still Remains, and we were talking about, I was like, there used to be a point where I was like, I don't necessarily understand when I was younger, like why someone needed to have like different outlets for something. It's like, why can't you just make the one thing be the thing you want all the things to be, like to express yourself creatively however you want to see that being. And I go, now essentially I have 3 podcasts, and I was like, and kind of going back to the idea of what I was saying earlier about roles and different styles of relationships contained within them, is I was like, this one I'm kind of, it's me and somebody else, whoever the guest is. Then there's another one I'm doing with like Corey from God Forbid, and Jackie, a friend of his that used to work or still does for like Metal Blade and stuff like that. And I'm more of like the third person. I sit back and just kind of wait for my turn to say something when I feel like I have something of value to say. And then I'm doing something else with 2 other friends, and I feel like I get to be more loose and way more honest than I have been even on here. But I also get to showcase like what I think is more of like my humor, and like kind of showcasing that. And it's funny because as TJ and I were talking, now that he's got 3 bands for himself, he's like, I can now go back to Still Remains, and I know what it is, and I know how to have that be the vehicle for these emotions, for these things, and it is the vehicle for that. This other band is a vehicle that allows me to express these ideas that I can't in something else. And it has become this thing where I just feel like having the understanding that you sometimes need a bunch of different outlets to be able to satiate your creative side and just kind of fulfill yourself, and not just be like, well, I only do this one thing. That I feel like it's got to be really refreshing, and kind of seeing you do this and have been doing it for so long, I feel like has probably made you a very balanced person in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely helped focus all the projects. I get asked like, how could you do multiple bands? That's crazy. I'm like, it makes the bands better. I remember like before even End started, struggling to kind of get songs to come together because felt like I was being pulled in other directions with Fit, because I was like, I want to do a part like this, and I like music like this, and I want to do this, and then I'm like kind of sitting there going through it all, and I'm just like, man, this is just me throwing the kitchen sink at stuff. I like need another outlet. I feel like it made both projects better, having the ability to kind of like focus them, in a way. And I'm sure a lot of people do other projects because they're inspired by something, or they want to create a certain type of music, but it doesn't fit in the constraints of what their band is, or it isn't like a good idea per se to take it into another direction. And it's really useful to help focus your projects like that.
Absolutely. Is there anything creatively maybe that you haven't been able to tap into, or that you haven't fulfilled yet, that you would like to do?
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely, I'm a fan of a lot of different styles of music. There's definitely stuff I've been slowly squeaking into projects and things I'd like to, try further down the line. I feel like End is starting to take a turn and incorporate some new elements, which is cool because it's stuff that me and Greg really like writing. And Fit is expanding like what it's capable of doing, and the door's kind of wide open with Better Lovers. So I'm sure in the next album cycles that come, there'll be some new things to try, Do
you ever envision there being a solo record of sorts?
I think I've got enough bands right now. I don't. At the moment, absolutely not. I have like too much. Okay. I would like to. I think there's some really important records coming up for, Better Lovers and Fit and what End does next. And I think a lot of my creative energy from like now till who knows is going to go into making those as cool as they can be. And maybe way down the line, if something inspires me and I want to do something that doesn't really make sense with the band, sure, but I currently feel like there's a lot to do with what I have. So
I think I had asked this before, and I'm blanking on what the answer was, which I think was just literally nothing. But what is it that you do to unwind and find like just to chill out? What does that look like for you?
I just sit on the couch and watch TV like a normal ass person. Like I don't have, I don't have too many outside hobbies, hobbies outside of music. I like just hanging out with my wife and my dog and relaxing and not listening to music. That's a big part of it. Just leaving music for a while is nice for me from time to time.
What is it that you are currently enjoying TV wise?
TV wise, I'm in like rerun zone now. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of people are because of the writer strikes and stuff, but I was currently rewatching Boardwalk Empires, which is a good show.
Oh, what a great show.
Yeah.
What a great show.
I'm getting through that. I'm almost towards the end of that. I'll probably finish it on the airplane to these next shows.
I weirdly have been doing the same thing, but in a completely different manner. I was going through when I was working at the bar a couple years ago, and I started watching Cheers, a show I had watched when I was growing up. But it's weird to have watched it now as an adult, having worked in the bar industry, and at the time was working in the bar industry. Like it just takes on a whole new shape and meaning. And then following it right into Frasier, since it obviously has the carryover of Kelsey Grammer playing Frasier. And that show, I think, still fucking holds up. Like Cheers is a little bit harder because the technology is not quite there to keep it feeling relevant. But Frasier, in as much as they still have cell phones, as primitive as they look and stuff like that, that show still fucking works to this day. And it's still funny.
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw Frasier. It wasn't my favorite show when I was a kid, but
Me neither.
I've been told I would like it, but who knows?
Who knows? I would check that out if you haven't. When you got time, if you do, load it up on your iPad or something or computer and check out a couple episodes and see if it hooks you.
Love it. Sounds great.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day. I know you got another one right after this, so I'll give you some time to do whatever you need to do. But looking forward to seeing you guys in a couple of months. I'm gonna go enjoy some wings down at Gabriel's Gate. Can't wait for it. I'm looking forward to being back in Buffalo in the winter.
Awesome, man. It was good chatting with you, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
So that was my conversation with Will Putney. Want to thank him once again for coming on. Always appreciative of anybody who comes on the show multiple times. I mean, in some regards, someone could be like, "Nope, fuck that. I ain't doing that." Wasn't worth it the first time. So it's always something that I don't take lightly when a guest comes back on. And it's always funny. I always kind of joke about how I used to think having a repeat guest would suck. And that it's like, what more could you possibly talk about that you didn't touch on the first episode? But obviously that's not how life works. Relationships kind of happen and a rapport is built and you're able to kind of expand upon things once you kind of know someone a little bit better. And I think that's kind of the nice thing about having, Will back on. I mean, like I said, the dude does so much between all the bands he does. And honestly, it was kind of cool to throw him for a little bit of a loop there when at the end when comparing how he is able to differentiate his own guitar tones between what he does in End, what he does in Fit for an Autopsy, and what he does in Better Lovers. And to me, it just kind of, it sort of really it was like a full circle moment listening to Wu-Tang and thinking about how RZA really took the time to mix them all differently so each MC had their own sound so you could identify who was who. And I feel like that's an interesting idea to parlay into as a producer who's a musician who's in 3 different bands. Like, do you subconsciously even think of having to do something like that? Like, okay, this tone is what I need for Fit for an Autopsy. It encapsulates these styles and sounds. When I'm in End, it needs to be this. When I'm in Better Lovers, that tone and that style is this. And I'm not saying that Will necessarily has a different tone, or I do say there's a little bit of a different tone, but it's interesting. I've been thinking so much more about tone lately after the Metallica show, like the last day or so of going to it. And honestly, hearing him live, like that was just something that I don't think, honestly, I have ever heard. Seeing a live band of any size is like just being able to hear the tone, like the attack of people playing the instruments. You could hear during Metallica set, you could tell that like Kirk was playing this riff, and then you could hear Hammett and you could just hear the, like, especially like the, for whom the bell tolls, like just that gun 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 gun, like you could hear every nuance of like the down picking and the fretting of the notes, and it just was insane to hear that much attack. I don't think I've ever heard any guitar player in any band of any size like where I could hear the attack of not only the right and the left hand simultaneously. Like it's sticking with me. It's all I'm thinking about. But kind of being aware of that even from Will, like none of those bands, Fit for an Autopsy and Better Lovers, don't sound the same. Nor would I expect them to, because obviously if they did, then you wouldn't need the other 3 bands. You could just do one band. So to me, it just becomes this thing of, like I said, it was through Wu-Tang Clan, listening to them and thinking about what RZA has done from a production standpoint, where it's like how much thought goes into you changing your sound to be something different. And I mean, and I kind of came up with that conclusion, honestly, after listening to all the End material, because like I think the guitar tone sounds a little bit different on every release that they put out. So it just kind of becomes like this weird thing. And sometimes you never know where where my brain's going to go with an idea. Like I said, I don't think anyone else probably would have listened to a hip hop record and just been like, oh, I wonder if like a guitar player producer will change up his shit because it just gives it a different vibe and it makes it uniquely unto that thing. So maybe that's why you like this show. Maybe that's why you fucking hate this show, because I say shit like that. All that said, I'm going to start wrapping up this episode. If you would like keep up with Fit for an Autopsy, I'm going to kind of go through the whole list of all the bands just to keep up with everything that Will's doing. I would say first and foremost, the easiest way to do it probably is just honestly go to Will's Instagram page. Just go find him at Will Putney on Instagram. There's a link tree to everything for all the bands he does, everything he's involved in. Dude just literally dropped a pedal that it already sold out in like, I think a few minutes, maybe a half hour. I was waiting to see what the description of the pedal was, and then by the time it went on sale, it had already sold out super quick. But yeah, I would just say go to Instagram, Will Putney. He's also on Twitter under Will Putney. I know I'm doing this kind of in the reverse order of how I normally do it. But then from there, we're going to go in the list of bands. So if you want to keep up with Fit for an Autopsy, you can find them on Facebook at Fit for an Autopsy Official, Instagram at Fit for an Autopsy, Twitter at Fit for an Autopsy, and you can just go to fitforanautopsy.co for the website. And you can go to Listen to End on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Your Fucking End. The Twitter one has an underscore first, and then it's Your Fucking End. Or you can just go to yourfuckingend.com. And for Better Lovers, you can find them. There is a Facebook page. They haven't made it a one with like an actual like URL where they put it in. So it's like profile and a shitload of numbers. But just type in Better Lovers in the search bar on Facebook and you'll find them. Instagram at Better Lovers Band and Twitter at Better Lovers. And you can go to godmademeananimal.com and that'll take you to Better Lovers website with all the different stuff. Looking forward to going to Blissmas in a couple of weeks as when I'm recording this and doing a bunch of the things in Buffalo that I love doing, going to a Sabres game with a bunch of people that are going to the show. It'll be fun. It'll be a rad, fun trip. Buffalo is always a good time. If you've never been to Buffalo and you like blue-collar towns, I would definitely say go check it out. And yeah, for the podcast as well, you can find us at BrewSpeakPod on all your major social media platforms. If you would like to keep up the conversation with something you heard in an episode and don't want to comment on social media, you can email me at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. You can also send me suggestions for guests that you'd like to see on the show. You can even tell me I suck. That's fine too. I'll take it all in stride. That was actually a funny thing. Speaking of Buffalo things, and I'm watching the Bills game right now. I was wearing my Bills hoodie at the Metallica show, and within about 45 seconds upon me leaving the venue, I had a drunk ass dude, stare at my hoodie and then look at me and go, "Josh Allen's a fucking bitch." And I just kind of was like, oh, okay. And then probably 12 seconds after that, another dude goes, "Let's go Buffalo." And I was like, there we are. So in a span of less than a minute, you get all spectrums of the fandom of being a sports fan. So there's that. I'm sorry, I'm just recounting that, and I'm still very much thinking that's funny, because why would you say Josh Allen's a fucking bitch? Like, I care. Like, I don't know. The dude's drunk. Either way. I want to thank my podcast sponsors for their continued support as well. Rockabilia.com. The holidays are fast approaching. Pick up something for yourself or a loved one. Use our code BREWtally at checkout and save 10% off your total purchase order. Want to thank all of them for the constant support. And Starving Artist Brewery, go over and check out their stuff over at starvingartist.beer. They have a lot of great things. Brewing, pun intended. They are closed for the season, though, but like I said, they got a lot of stuff they are cooking for the next year. I'm very excited to try some of these new beers that they are working on now. It's kind of the bummer when breweries start teasing like shit they're making, and you're like, I won't get that for like a while, potentially. So that sucks. All that said, definitely want to thank everyone for listening and supporting. It means a lot. You know, the holidays are coming up, and you know, a lot of people that are in this podcast game that I am following and that I am friends with. It has been great to see just so many awesome things happening for so many people. I want to give a quick shout out to Lurk over at Lamb Goat. He hooked up with Daryl from Glassjaw. That is going to be an amazing episode. By the time you're hearing this, that probably will be out either this week or maybe next week. So many people just doing great things. Dewey over at Peer Pleasure got Kat Von D. That episode's already out. Just a lot of people doing great things, man. And like I said, after the Metallica show and seeing Patrick playing all different kinds of venues and stuff like that, it's still a thing where seeing people succeed and doing well is great. And I think we need to be more supportive of our friends and those in similar situations as us, and support the victories and all that just as much as anything else, because you know, we deserve it. There's a lot of hard work going into these things, man. Like, fucking raise people up. Just don't be a dick. Or does that guy say, don't be a fucking bitch? And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will see you all next week, where my guests, plural, Jordan and Mitch from Better Lovers. I haven't done it. We're doing it tomorrow. but I'm excited for it. It's been a long time coming. I'm excited to chat with those two. I have no idea what that's going to be like. Kind of a little bit nervous, but we'll get into it then, and you'll hear it then. So until next week, I'll talk to you all then.